They say, can you ever really go home again? The short answer is no. The longer answer would probably be, hey, what are you doing in my house? You don't live here. You don't belong here. Get out. I'm gonna call the police. But I did decide on my way back to my home that I'd stop off in my old hometown, as I refer to it, Dale City, Virginia. And I'm actually standing right across the street from my old house. Right now, I'm actually in this cul-de-sac where I learned how to ride my bike. Right over here, so right here is my old house. That was my sister's room up the top left on your screen. My room was right next door to that. There used to be a pine tree where the second half of the driveway is now. That's been extended. And then over there, next door, was Mr. Steve's house, our next door neighbor. Here we have the McPherson's house with their daughter Barbara. She was a year older than me, but she was my best friend for a while until they moved. Over here we had the Hutchinsons lived in this house here till they moved, and they had a son named Richie who was my age. I guess you could say he was my first best friend. We were about 5 years old. And then after that, we have the Worthing's house. Oh, then the Hughes moved in there. I see someone pulling up at my old house. I'm gonna go chat, say hi real quick. I know I made that crack about going to your old home, and the homeowner said, "Hey, what are you doing here? You don't live here," and blah blah blah. I met up with the homeowners because I was out here doing a video. As you saw, I saw them pulling up into the driveway, so I went up and introduced myself, told them who I was and how I used to live here, and they invited me into the house. So I got to tell stories about what the house was like back when I lived there in the late 70s, mid 80s. And we talked about the area. The wife, she also grew up here, and she moved down here though in the 90s, she said, but she's a lot younger. She and her husband, they're probably about what, early mid 30s. And so she grew up here as well. Even went to the same school, which we're headed to next. Actually, I'm going to stop off at that little shopping center up here in the corner, do some video there. But then I'm going to go to the school. So I got to see my old bedroom, and they took me down to the den, and they showed me, and they asked me how, if it still looked the same. I was like, no, it's a little different, but some of it's still the same. But it was just fantastic. Just fantastic trip. Now over here is this little shopping center. It's right at the corner of Delaney Road and Dale Boulevard. And this was built back in, I want to say 80, 81. It was built new. I mean, it wasn't here when I first moved in here in 79. This here used to be a restaurant called Casoni's. It later became a Domino's and then a Papa John's. But they've moved now to this newer addition. Over here where one of these two used to be a video store. And that video store had a Tron arcade cabinet that they were selling for about $2,000, which I begged my dad to buy. Of course, this is 1983. My dad's not going to, my dad wouldn't spend $2,000 now on an arcade cabinet. But that started my lifelong obsession of owning a Tron arcade cabinet when I finally achieved this past Christmas. I can't remember what other stores used to be here. This here, where you see the Papa John's and the phone place, that's a newer addition. You can never tell because the brick is a lot better than this. Tires for Less, I don't remember them being there. I think that's newer. The 7-Eleven that was over there, that was always there. But that 7-Eleven is also the first time I ever played Pac-Man was there. We're in there one day, and my mom popped in a quarter and said, "Hey, check this out." And That's where I discovered the love of Pac-Man. Another arcade cabinet that I was going to have one day, and it was the first one I bought. In fact, when my math tutor, because I was terrible at math, so my second grade teacher, Mrs. Jelena, her daughter Sean used to be my math tutor, and sometimes when the weather was nice, we'd do this game with flashcards. We'd start at my house, and she'd show me a flashcard, and if I got the answer right, I took a step. If I got it wrong, I took a step back. But basically, we worked our way up here to the 7-Eleven, and then if we made it up here to 7-Eleven, she'd buy me a Slurpee. We're now about 5 minutes away from my old house, and we are at my school. First school I ever attended, from kindergarten to 4th grade. Because then we moved in August, about August 1984, I think it was, like late August. It was close to the beginning of the new school year, because I don't remember being out of school for that long up in Massachusetts. Yeah, it's kind of funny though, walking here, because it's so much smaller. In fact, even when I was in my old house, when they took me downstairs to the den and asked me if it still looked the same, I'm like, sort of, except I remember it being bigger. Now, of course, the other thing too is, if you follow the channel or if you really know me, you know my huge undying love for Star Trek. And why is it I'm such a huge Trekkie? I wonder. Now, now the funny thing is, like I said, I lived here through the ages of 5 and 10. So obviously I wasn't driving. I had to be driven everywhere. But it's just amazing how much I still remember from my time living here. Because now I'm just leaving the school, and I'm going to drive by my old babysitters. I'm pretty sure I can still find it like that. So right now we're passing by Lieberg Court. You see, I used to have to walk to school. My parents dropped me off at the babysitter, which was right down here, and then I'd walk to school and then back. And back then I used to think it was such a long walk, but it's not. Now turning on Langstone Drive. And I know I'm in the right place because I see my friend Romel's house, which we're just passing. It's gonna be right there. There's a gentleman out there. I might almost stop by, but yeah. But Romel and I, we were friends at school. We'd hang out here, but we weren't that close. He was close. He had an Atari 2600, so it was always cool to go over there and play his Atari. And oh, I just passed it. That house there was our babysitter's house, Mrs. Simpson. And actually, she was the second one we had on the street. Another one we had was a little bit further down. Just a couple doors down, really. That house there, I believe, if I remember correctly. Because it was on a hill. In fact, it was this hill that I was in my first car accident. We'd had an ice storm, and the road was very icy. My mom had picked us up and in the blue Pinto station wagon, and going down the hill, just lost traction, and it was right around in front of this house here that we had a school bus, and bounced off, and then came all the way down, and then crashed right there in front of that house. Of course, both my mom and I, we were really shaken up, and especially since this was the day before seatbelt laws and stuff like that, so no one ever wore seatbelts. My sister, on the other hand, was like, hey, can we do that again? All right, we're heading down Dale Boulevard, and we're gonna go to some other places that we used to frequent a lot. My second grade teacher and her family, the Gelinas, lived down towards the right on that side of Delaney. I can't exactly remember where, because I'd only been to the house a couple of times, but I did think it was kind of cool that one of my teachers actually lived that close. Coming up on the left of the camera, that big building there, that is the old firehouse. Yep, that's the fire station. You know, it's funny. In my memory, I'm remembering the fire department being across from the pool, but I guess I'm wrong in that one. But my best friend Barbara, her older sister, was much older, was a volunteer firefighter, and even had equipment in her car. So if she had to go out on a run or she was out and about, she had her own light, just like in 1970s cop shows. Where the detective would take that magnetic light and put it on top of the car and go. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. She also had her own CB radio. I think she was the second wedding I ever went to. First being our neighbor, Mr. Steve. Try that again in the English language. Mr. Steve, his roommate, Mr. Clark and Miss Candy, the two of them got married. I think that was the first wedding I'd ever been to. All right, well, here we come up to Center Plaza. Go on in here. Make a turn. We'll drive back here real quick. Back here we got all these cars and everything, but back when I lived here in the 80s, you had what was called blue laws here in Virginia. So that meant businesses had to close on Sundays. So there'd be no cars back here at all. And so after church, when I was learning how to ride my bike, my parents would load up the bike in the back of the station wagon, and we'd come up here and I'd ride it all around because there's really very little that I could run into. Had all this open space to ride my bike. Now, of course, over time, 35 years, so 35 plus years since we've left, things have changed. This Little Caesars, for example, this Little Caesars and a vape shop used to be all one business. This was Kenny's Shoes. This is where I used to always get my shoes. Over here, at the end, it's kind of hidden in that back corner that truck is going, kind of inset. It's a Dairy Queen. It's always been here, as far back as I can remember. Dill City Music, it's always been here, as far back as I can remember. The pizza shop here, Padrino's, always been here. One of these shops used to be a bike shops where I bought where I got my first bike, the one that I learned to ride. The Giant, always been here. A lot of these other shops, of course, new. Things come and go as they do with time. Across the street, hard to see, but through the trees there's an Ace Hardware store, always been there. A CVS is new, but just past that, just behind that, a building there, that church, that used to be our local movie theater. Saw lots of movies there. And then over there's the bowling alley. That's always been here. And there's a Pizza Hut right next to that. It's always been there. Another place that's always been there is down here in the corner, that Long John Silver's. Now, I kind of grew up loving Long John Silver's, even though I don't like seafood. I love their chicken planks and the hush puppies. But whenever my grandparents would come up here to visit, I always looked forward to that because I knew we were going to be eating at Long John Silver's. And my grandparents loved it as well. While reminiscing with the folks who currently own my old house, they said it was funny that I have such a good memory about what this place was like back when I lived here. Because again, I moved from here in 1984. So it's been a very long time. And it's just one of those things. I mean, we moved from here, we moved to Massachusetts, and then we eventually moved back down to where I currently live in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And they were just amazed that I remember so much. And I've always felt like a permanent connection to this place. Unlike all the other places I lived, New Orleans and again, Massachusetts, I felt more of a permanent connection here, as if a part of me has always lived here and probably always will. Can't quite explain it. Now it's time to eat. It's lunchtime, so we're coming here to a pizza shop that we used to eat at all the time. It's now called Pizza Bullies, but for the longest time it used to be called Brothers. It may not be Brothers Pizza, but it does look good. My mouth is watering. Just gotta wait for it to cool down a bit. So that's my tour of my old hometown, Dale City, Virginia. So I'm going to work on this pizza and then hit the road. It's probably about a 3.5, maybe 4 hour drive back to Portsmouth. And I'm going to have a very happy kitty cat when I get home. I know she's missed me. So have fun.